Let's go! What's that? It's gonna be a football game tonight now, no doubt. It's gonna be a football game here. Okay. I done been here before. All right, let's go, baby.
9. Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground, and it's still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line. Vaughn Miller did it again.
Alabama back on top of the college football world.
Ladies and gentlemen, football to the max.
Your host, Sean Garmer, Gary Vaughn, and Randy Isbell.
Hello and welcome to Football to the Max once again. And man, we just got the first no connect thing. This is going to be hilarious all day. Okay, so I really hope they fix whatever this... Okay, so I'm rambling, and if you probably do not know what I'm talking about here. So Spreaker has been having this problem all night while we have done 2 other podcasts of wanting to disconnect and then reconnect about 2 seconds later. Well, normally when that's been happening, it will just continue on with the same episode. Well, now it's making new episodes every time. And, you know, it's causing havoc everywhere. And it just did it again. So, yes, this is going to be fun. I'm going to be deleting stuff half the time throughout this podcast. So this is our AFC East 2016 Division preview. So Randy gets to hear another person, not him having to actually act like another person. It's we actually have another Jets fan on here.
There are more than one of us.
Yeah, so, you know, big news, Randy, about Ryan Fitzpatrick re-signing.
The beard is back, baby. Have you seen that thing? That's all he's done in the offseason, I think, is grow that beard.
That's beautiful, isn't it? It's a thing of art. You know, you got to respect it, you got to appreciate it, and you know, we'll see if it gets him ready for training camp. You know.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, fully guaranteed $12 million.
Oof. You know, the fact that Nick Foles got released, does that make this happen? Or why did they decide out of nowhere just to let's get him as fast as we can?
Well, the funny thing is, just kind of a behind-the-scenes thing here was I was watching SportsCenter that day, and they were talking about the Fitzpatrick talk, and, you know, they haven't really moved the needle yet, but Fitzpatrick is staying somewhere near the facility just in case things got going, because it was a day before the Jets' first practice, which was today. And I messaged Sean like this. I just wish this would get over with. You know, just hurry up and sign Fitzpatrick. And he's like, "Yeah, I'm tired of hearing this." Not 5 minutes later, the end of SportsCenter, they're like, "Oh, hey, we have breaking news. Fitzpatrick is signed with the Jets." So, I mean, I think Fitzpatrick was ready. I think that's why he was hanging out near the facility. So he's like, "Okay, I know practice is tomorrow, so let's just get something done." I know he wanted a long-term deal. The Jets didn't want to give in to that, so I think they compromised here. Give him a good chunk of money, all of it guaranteed for this year, plus $3 million worth of extra incentives for the year. And, you know, if he can duplicate what he did last year, then give him a multi-year deal. So it was a nice compromise, I think, between the two sides, that they waited till the last chance they had before it would start affecting the team. So just glad it got done.
Do you think it had anything to do with Nick Foles, though? Because I've heard people say, you know, maybe, you know, the Jets were thinking, man, we can move on if this guy is just going to be stubborn. We can find somebody else. And maybe Fitzpatrick got a little bit nervous about that and said, you know what, no. I just need to sign a deal.
Not at all. Nick Foles getting cut, I mean, he's going to find a job somewhere as a decent backup. But the Jets have 3 other quarterbacks on their team. I think they were ready to go with Geno Smith if need be. They weren't going to go out and get another quarterback to add to the craziness. I think they would have went, okay, well, Fitzpatrick, we're here if you ever want to come back. But, I mean, at some point they were going to go to Geno Smith. Adding Nick Foles, I don't think would have done anything but make every Jets fan just throw up in their mouth a little bit. Not that, I mean, say what you will about Nick Foles, whether you like him or not, but throwing him in this late in the offseason, he's not going to learn the offense well enough, so he would have just been a backup. Bryce Petty can be a backup just as well as anybody. So I think they would have went into the season with Geno Smith if Fitzpatrick didn't go. So did Nick Foles getting released change anything? I can't say it did.
Yeah, you got to feel bad for Geno Smith, because I think he, of course, was set up for being the starting quarterback. For Jets fans, I'm sure they're still thrilled that he wasn't. Fitzpatrick was the guy. But once again, when someone throws the first punch, he's down. So Fitzpatrick made that signature, and it's done. He's the starting quarterback of the Jets. And I think I think the beard thing is really all about, he wanted to show, for every inch his beard is how many zeros he wanted on his contract. But they met in the middle, so.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to start here is with, of course, like I said, we're trying not to. There is a ton of other news that happened. And sorry we didn't have time to do an NFL News Extra when a lot of the thing was going on. But we are trying to keep these things where they are able to stand by themselves so that when it gets close to that season, I can start promoting these more hardcore and be able to send them out whenever because they are just that all they are is just the previews. So we'll start here with Randy's Jets. Last word on sports writer John Jackson. I also actually had at one point 2 Jets writers that were going to do interviews, but unfortunately one of the Jets writers got food poisoning the night before, and just want to say I hope that Parmita feels better because I think she was still going through it today. So, but here is John Jackson, about 15 minutes, talking all things Jets and we do talk about a little bit here of the Ryan Fitzpatrick re-signing. Hello, and I am here with last word on sports writer for the New York Jets, John Jackson. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Sean. How about yourself?
Doing all right. So, is being a Jets fan, is that a lifelong thing, or is that something you picked up as you grew up, or?
Yeah, that's been a lifelong thing. My dad was a Jets fan, so I've inherited it, and it's been tough along the way, but, we've had some success recently. Not super recently, but last year, 10-6 season. I wasn't complaining. It's just the playoffs, missing that. It was tough.
Oh, yeah. I have a Jets fan as one of my co-hosts for the podcast, and I had to literally, just witness him breaking down.
At what I can only imagine.
So, he, just like you, he has to deal with all the heartbreak and all that stuff. It's being a Cowboys fan, they've kind of done that to us very recently,
Yeah, for sure.
So it's especially like, my other co-host is also a Cowboys fan, and we're sitting there going, oh, well, Romo went down, so there goes the whole season,
Yeah, that's been the story of the Cowboys seasons without Romo. Tough to win.
Yeah. So, the big news, obviously, yesterday, finally, after this entire off-season of will he, won't he, what's going on, what's the deal with the money, Ryan Fitzpatrick resigns with the Jets. Obviously, you feel much better about the team, but do you have, at least playoff expectations now with Fitzpatrick back?
Yeah, I see the whole team just getting better with Fitzpatrick there. He's much of an upgrade over Geno Smith for sure. And this definitely puts them in the playoff conversation, but it is going to be tough. They have one of the hardest schedules in all of the NFL. So will they make the playoffs? I'm not totally sure, but this definitely puts them in as a playoff contender.
Yeah, I mean, and they just talk about that schedule, just really rough having to play so many. I mean, I can't see a bad until you get to like the Browns way down there in week 8. Can you really see a team that's maybe not actually pretty good that you're playing, and just the sort of murderer's row that you're playing there at the beginning is evil.
I guarantee you, first 4 games are going to make or break the team, because not just with the Jets themselves, you have the Patriots without Brady for the first 4 games, and then you have the Jets with a tough schedule of first 4 games. You know, if the Jets ended up 3-1, 4-0, the Patriots were 0-4 or 1-3, you know, then that puts the Jets in a much better position. But I don't know, if the Jets end up losing a few of those games and the Patriots win without Brady, it's going to be very hard for the Jets to come back.
So looking at the team, you know, as what would happen in free agency and the draft, I mean, you picked up a great, you know, veteran in Matt Forte to sort of replace Chris Ivory and what he brought. What do you think he brings to the team? And do you feel like, you know, Chris Ivory had the injury problems last year? Do you feel like you have maybe a better running back system than before?
Yeah, so I actually think Forte is better, but not as just a running, you know, I don't think he's going to get more yards than Chris Ivory, but he's one of those rare dual threats that, you know, he could catch the ball and he could run with the ball. So that's going to open more options, too, for Fitzpatrick. So I could actually see Matt Forte being an upgrade over Chris Ivory, who had a terrific season last year.
You know, the defense, obviously one of the biggest pieces of the team, and it's been something that the Jets have relied on. Muhammad Wilkerson was sort of almost trade bait for a while. There was even that fake trade that happened during the free agency season and everything. And then the big news that he re-signs with the Jets. What does that mean for them?
He's definitely one of the top defensive players in the league, and you could honestly say he's by far the best player on the Jets right now. Not only by performance, but by leadership, too. The Jets really needed a guy like that. And although he's just one guy among many other defensive players, it's guys like that that help carry the team. We see that with the Texans. J.J. Watt, you know, he's a guy who carries the team even though he's on defense. So it's huge for the Jets to re-sign Muhammad Wilkerson. And honestly, that could be what puts them over into the playoffs. If they didn't have him and only have Fitzpatrick, I don't even think I would be talking about playoffs. That's how much he brings to the team.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, he was certainly that linchpin of that defense last year, and so having him back is huge. But looking at the draft for you, you know, you picked up a Darren Lee from Ohio State and another linebacker and Jordan Jenkins. Do you think either one of these guys do something on the defense in their first year?
I could see Darren Lee right away making an impact, especially he was, you know, the Jets replaced, they needed him as a replacement. They got rid of the player last year that he's going to be filling. I think, you know, especially every first-round pick they have the ability to make a difference. I see him making a difference right away. Plus, he has a supporting cast around him that could help him. It's not like all on his shoulders. So I could see him doing well for sure coming out of the draft.
Did you like the choice of Christian Hackenberg as another backup QB? Is he sort of the same as a Bryce Petty kind of developmental guy?
Yeah, see, 100%. I did not like that pick, Christian Hackenberg. I see him, like you said, almost exactly like Bryce Petty. And actually, when I heard that, I was at a Mets game, so you have other Jets fans around you too, since it's in New York, and everybody was just so angry and upset that they drafted another quarterback. Because you look now, they have Fitzpatrick, they have Bryce Petty, they have Christian Hackenberg, they have Geno Smith. You can't have 4 quarterbacks, so it looks like having Hackenberg now they're either going to have to cut Geno or cut Petty, and it's probably going to be Petty sooner or later. They're not going to carry 4. I don't see that as – I found that very unimportant. And if they were able to sign Fitzpatrick before the draft, there's no way they would have drafted Hackenberg.
Do you see – I mean, obviously, Fitzpatrick has at times had injuries. Do you see Geno Smith improving at all from what we've seen of him?
Yeah, I was actually kind of joining the Geno train for now because a lot of the fans were trying to build him up. And I would have seen some – I think we all would have seen some improvement in Geno because last time Geno played in 2014, all he had was Eric Decker, who was the number 1 wide receiver. Now he would have went a full season with Brandon Marshall. He would have had Decker with lesser coverage, and Decker was better last year with lesser coverage as the number 2 wide receiver. He would have had Matt Forte, another option to throw to, and Jason Morrow, hopefully he'll be back for the season. I know he had him in 2014, but he's a guy who could also be improving. So he would have had a lot more receivers, a lot bigger, better choices to throw to. So I would have seen, I could definitely see Geno improving, but I still feel Fitzpatrick's going to do better than whatever an improved Geno would have done.
So, you already kind of talked about Brady and, how that affects the Jets depending on what they do. What do you think is going to happen with the Patriots and Brady being out?
So it's those first 4 games for the Patriots, those are huge because it's a possibility. I don't expect it, but it's a possibility they could lose 3 or 4 of those games because they don't have a guy like Brady. He's a big part of that team, huge part. But if the Patriots end up winning 2 or 3, I don't think that's going to hurt the Patriots too much over the course of the season because I expect Brady to come back and win his usual, 11, 12 games or something like that. So I say for the Patriots, they're definitely not going to be as good as they have been in the past few years. But I'd say 10, 11 games, if you include the 4 games that Brady's not going to be there, that's realistic. So the Jets are going to have to earn that division. It's not a huge break just losing Brady for 4 games.
All right, so looking at the other 2 teams in the division, the Dolphins changed coaches. The Bills look to improve upon last year. Do you think that they're more of a threat to the Jets this year?
I don't feel that either team's going to be more of a threat. I feel they're going to probably do exactly what they did last year. Like the Dolphins, for example, they lost Vernon. They lost Lamar Miller, even though they did bring in Arian Foster, but I feel he's too questionable to say that they got better at the position. And the Dolphins last year, I believe they finished 6-10. So I don't see them improving that much. And even if they did, that shouldn't be too big of a threat to the Jets. The Bills, on the other hand, they had a good team back in 2014. Last year, they were 8-8, nothing too special. And they really didn't have a lot of cap space to sign too many impact players. I mean, one of the biggest additions they really had was just bringing Rob Ryan onto the team. And we've seen Rob do good things with some teams, but also have disastrous years on defense with other teams. So I don't see the other 2 as a big threat. I feel the biggest threat will be the Jets themselves. Can they win enough games to make that playoff spot? The Bills and Dolphins shouldn't be too big.
So give me a best case and worst case scenario for the Jets, realistically.
I would say worst case scenario, the Jets, they win 7 games. I still think even with this difficult schedule, they could definitely get 7 games. They'll miss the playoffs, obviously. But their team is really good. It's just a matter of the schedule or not. Will Fitz do anything close to what he did last year? So I feel 7 games worst case scenario. And I feel best case is 10-6. They make the playoffs. Again, it's possible. If the thing is, if this team can do what they did last year, there's a few games last year they could have won. They should have beaten the Bills. They should have beaten the Eagles. They even underperformed, I feel, last year. So it's possible, best case scenario, 10-6, and then make the playoffs.
So I'm gonna make you have to make make a prediction here of what do you think will be the final standings at the end of the year for the division?
Okay, so I'll say the Patriots go 11-5. I say the Jets, weighing that best case scenario, worst case scenario, I feel they'll finish 10-6 because I'm an optimistic Jets fan, and I feel the Bills will finish. To be honest, I feel them and the Dolphins will finish almost exactly the same. I'll give one less win to the Dolphins. I feel they finish in 4th, 5-11. They really didn't improve. Bills 3rd place, 8-8.
So do you see Ryan Fitzpatrick sort of having that same year or anything similar to that? Or do you think that there kind of has to be sort of a downturn?
I feel for sure there's going to have to be a downturn because he did so well last year. But even his regression would still be better than an improved Geno. That's what I feel when it comes to Fitzpatrick. Of course, I'm speaking very optimistically as a Jets fan, but I expect. I mean, he had a historic year for the Jets, 31 touchdowns. That was the most by any Jet quarterback in a single season. I can't see him, doing that good again. I don't see a big regression though.
What do you think that Todd Bowles has brought to the team that perhaps wasn't there with the previous coaches?
I feel the Rex Ryan was respected. He was loved in the clubhouse, but he was a little too eccentric. He always in the media for the good, for the bad, making bold predictions. Todd Bowles knew what his team was capable of, but he wouldn't brag about the team. He didn't guarantee the Super Bowls that Rex Ryan was guaranteeing. He's that typical, great leader that every team should get. And he honestly, I feel he impacts everybody. He's serious. There's no joking around. And if you're not performing well, he's going to let you know. That's the type of coach, that's the type of leadership that Todd Bowles brings to the team.
All right, John, you've answered all of our questions here. I want to say thank you for helping us out. And
No
people
problem.
here that listen to this didn't hear the technical issues, but I want to say I appreciate you sticking through and in with all that.
No problem, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I meant to say this before we started the actual interview, but you probably heard my daughter probably a lot through that. I forgot about her doing her swim class right at 4:00, and she kept having to come in and get clothes, and she started talking to me and stuff while he was talking, and I had to tell him I had to redo parts of the interview and whatever, and he was a real trooper. So I want to thank John again for being awesome, because a lot of people would have just been like, "Oh, really? This is kind of unprofessional," and all this stuff. It was my bad. I should have waited 30 minutes and told him to let's start then, but it completely blew my mind. I don't know why I had brain fart. It was like, oh yeah, she's gonna be getting ready right now. And of course, also, kids, when you tell them to be quiet, they do the exact opposite. So, always great that way. But also because the studio is being an absolute turd right now, we're gonna have to do this very differently than the way we do it normally. We'll go ahead and do our Jets analysis, but we're going to have to just go ahead and do our full standings and everything now, because we're doing this at 5 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, and, we all need to get to bed. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do our normal talk about the team that just happened, and then we'll just do our full standings, and you guys will just hear the interviews after this. I'll kind of cut in between to kind of lead you through the next person, but Randy and Gary won't be here after this one here. So, Randy, I know you didn't really get to hear a lot of what he had to say, but, the Jets, they were very close last year.
I know.
Are you expecting at least for them to be in that position again this year?
Listen, they're going to be right in the mix, I think. They've made a lot of like extra small changes. I don't think they lost a lot in the offseason, and adding somebody like a Matt Forte to take the place of Chris Ivory, which part of the interview that I did get to hear while studio was being nice was how he was saying that Matt Forte will add to the passing game, which I 100% agree on. You have him and Blaupau both, great pass catchers out of the backfield. So I think that's actually an upgrade. Whether Forte is overall a better runner than Ivory by that much is tough to say right now. The defense stays basically the same, a few small changes here and there. Obviously, the Wilkerson signing is nice. But I just like that the Jets have a veteran team right now that, if they had a different name, most people would say, they have a chance to win the Super Bowl. But it's the New York Jets. They find ways to screw things up like they did last year. And there's a chance of it again here, especially, like he said, the brutal schedule that the Jets have to go through. I mean, what is it? 4 of your first 6 games are on the road, and your 2 home games are against Cincinnati and Seattle. It's not a very easy time for the Jets, but I mean they got a veteran team and they have a chance.
Yeah, certainly. Gary, what do you think about the Jets here? Ooh, we might have.
I agree with Randy on a lot of it. I mean, I do, and it's just looking at this whole thing. I think they're one of the few teams in the AFC who can walk into this season and say they've got a great shot at making the playoffs and got a great shot at even a Super Bowl. I think there's other teams in the AFC that you say, well, man, that they look good or they have the possibility, but you're not sure of it. You can almost be sure of it with the veterans on this team that, they're going to make a strong push. I really feel that way. I think the Patriots have always been a big stumbling block, have always kind of kept them in check in a way. And, the Patriots are a little different now, at least for 4 games for certain. So it brings up a lot of questions. But, by themselves, without anybody else, any other teams to worry about, I think the Jets are a pretty solid team because they kept it that way.
Yeah, I mean, they've improved their offense. Certainly their defense, and as John mentions, he thinks that the team would still not be the same if, let's say, they let Wilkerson go and they got Fitzpatrick back, because he's such a huge part of that defense, and now they've been able to sort of keep everyone, and they have reloaded and are prepared for this next try. And I think certainly the issue is going to be, is the Fitzpatrick year a one-year wonder, which is probably why the Jets didn't want to lock him up long term. Mm-hmm. And when I have the Bills guy on, he talks about that the Bills sort of got burned with Fitzpatrick like that, and so that the Jets didn't want to go through the same thing, and mm-hmm. hopefully Fitzpatrick can prove him wrong. And the Jets can do better. But
and actually, before you get that, I mean, obviously Fitzpatrick is a question mark as far as was it a 1-year wonder or not. I mean, the Jets are all in on him. But to me, the biggest question mark for this team, and Gary, I'm curious how you think, is somebody that I haven't heard a lot about, and that was their big deal to get Ryan Clady, the left tackle out of Denver. Amazing talent, lots of injury concerns. He's your left tackle. If he goes down, I think the whole season goes down with him. He's there to protect Fitzpatrick. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think the wild card for the Jets to make the playoffs or not is the health of Clady.
You bring up a good point, and that is a big deal. Of course, that's a big deal on most of these NFL teams, but especially for a team that has a guy like Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is not the most mobile. Now, he can get around. I'm not saying he's a statue, but he's also not Cam Newton. He's also not even an RG3 with bad knees. I just think that is a really critical issue, like you're pointing out. And not only that, you've got to look at the fact that without him, the running game is not going to work as well either. And that's another thing. They're going to be dealing with, a pretty decent running game here if they can keep that offensive line healthy. And he is going to be a big issue. If he decides to go down for 3 or 4 games and they can't run the ball effectively and they definitely can't pass the ball effectively, you're talking the difference between being a, even a division clinching team to a barely making the playoffs team to maybe not even making the playoffs. So that's a big issue, and I look at it, and it's a great point.
Yeah, it is, and so I think Clady is. I actually forgot to ask John about that, but that's going to be a really key thing. Other than just being the left tackle, we know he's talented. He's very good at his position. It's just about, can he stay healthy? And if he can, I think the Jets will be even better.
Well, I want to ask you this, Randy, because this is a thought process. I was kind of thinking, let's just say the scenario does go down. Let's say Clady's out. Let's say minimum 3 games. They've got to overcome that. I love the fact that these running backs can catch the ball out of the backfield. Both, we've said Forte and Billy Powell. Do you think that they can, rely on quick screens, things like that? These receivers that they have are not slouches. Let's be honest. So I think if they can find a way to get the ball out of Fitzpatrick's hands, they may be able to overcome that, though.
Yeah, slightly. I think it will hamper Brandon Marshall and his ability because he's more of a downfield threat. But you do bring up a good point with Forte and Powell, and Decker can definitely go up the middle. And Nunwa is not a wide receiver to sleep on. And with Fitzpatrick and how smart he is, I think that they could come up with a game plan where they're doing a lot of dinking and dunking. It becomes more of a problem if you start to fall behind in games. I think their margin of error in the first half becomes non-existent because they have to continue to be either right next to the lead or in the lead. I think if Clady goes down and they go down by more than 10 points at any point in the game while he's gone, you can almost just write that off because they're not going to have time to go deep down the field as much as they'd want. They could surprise me, and the backups for the offensive line could completely step up and still continue to give him time. But Fitzpatrick is decently mobile inside the pocket, but you lose somebody as good as Clady, and it's going to be a whole different story.
And I know, just to go back to the defensive side of the ball, I kind of feel like if I'm going to rely on some of the defenses in this league, the Jets defense is not a bad one to rely on to kind of help your team overcome issues like, a big part of your offense going away.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and have to do the predictions right now. What do you think is going to be the final standings for this division?
Somebody go first.
Oh, I don't want to be the first one, but I'll take a stab at it. Go ahead, Sean. Go.
I think the Patriots are still going to win the division. I think that team is too talented now with all the additions that they've made. The defense got better. The receiving core got even better, and you had the Martellus Bennett having the double tight end. You still got the question mark there with, is Dion Lewis going to be back to his original form that we saw pre the injury? LeGarrette Blount, he can be on and off, so that's something you got to watch out for as well. But honestly, I think Garoppolo can at least get him to 2-2, and they'll be okay. And then Tom Brady comes, and I think he'll have that same sort of chip on his shoulder as last year, and they will play well enough to again win this division. Now, there's got to be that time where Brady's not Brady anymore, but I don't know if this is the year. After that, I think the Jets are clearly the number 2 team. They lost nothing from last year. I think they do make the wild card this time. and I'll say they're 10-6, and actually making it because they don't lose games that they shouldn't. The Bills will probably do the same thing as last year. The Carlos Williams being out may affect them. I don't know if that's going to be a huge blow for the first 4 games or not, but I don't know. I just think that Tyrod Taylor's going to have a tough time staying healthy, and maybe that they get all their penalty situations and all that stuff fixed, but I don't know. It's for me, the Bills, they've got some issues that they've got to get in order, and the Dolphins, I think they'll be right behind them, 7-9, something like that. Adam Gase is going to certainly get them on the right track. I think you're going to see a much better Dolphins team this year. You're going to see a Ryan Tannehill that may be improving just because the offense that Adam Gase runs is meant for a quarterback to. I don't know how you could just do wrong in that system, and they've got so many good receivers. The questions is obviously going to be a running back with Arian Foster and all that, and the defense has got some holes now with Olivier Vernon, and Cameron Wake is older, so but that division should be really competitive.
Yeah, I think you're completely right. It's going to be competitive to an extent. Still, I feel like it is a little top heavy compared to some. I don't know. I just kind of feel like it is top heavy for me. I think that the Patriots are still going to be the top team, and it's not because I really believe that Tom Brady is going to make the redemption story that we've all been wanting to see. I think it's what's going to happen here is that they are going to kind of do what Sean said. They'll probably split the 2, win 2, lose 2 when it comes to those 4-game suspension for Brady. I look at this team. I look at the fact that this coaching staff year in and year out turns the roster and still comes out with solid teams no matter what. So I still look at them as a favorite. Are they very far ahead of the Jets? No. In my opinion, those 4 games that Tom Brady's out will matter. And I think to an extent that could also hinder them from making separation. So I'm looking at this Patriots team as being a team that's probably going to be at 10-6. I really feel like they're going to lose at least 4 games with Brady and then 2 without him. I just don't think that they're the perfect team. I think they're a good team, but I don't think they're perfect. And I think the Jets are same. I think that their veterans are going to help them get through a lot of tough games. They've got a really difficult schedule, kind of like Randy pointed out earlier. I look at, Fitzpatrick, though, is coming into this season ready to go. I think he wants to prove that he's worth the money. I really do. I think that, he's had some bad years coming off good years. We've seen it. It's history. I don't know. I just think we're seeing a Fitzpatrick that's matured, who's ready to come into this game and make a difference. And I think it's going to matter at times. So I'm looking at the Jets coming in, and I think they may be 1 game behind the Patriots at 9-7, but I still think they're a playoff contender. Then I go and I look at the other teams in this, and I look at the Bills, and I think, man, Tyrod Taylor could be a game changer at times because he does have some speed. He does make some crazy decisions that sometimes turn out to be really good and other times turn out to be really awful. So that's what concerns me about them, as well as the Carlos Williams situation. That kind of leads them into a place that they're going to have to find a way to make up for that. And I think they will. They've got a good rookie there, running back that's going to help them, and Dixon. I think he'll make a lot of difference. So I look at the defense, too, on the Bills and say that they still have a shot at keeping and staying in games. I don't know. I think I'm going to put them at 7-9, though. I just don't trust them. I think they're going to lose a lot of close games, and people are going to be like, man, this team is 2 points away from winning every game, and they just can't get over that hump. They could kick a field goal and be, like a playoff contender. And then I go to the Dolphins, and I look at that defense. I'm terrified for them. I look at the fact that their offense has basically 1 running back who's unproven and another one who there's no proof that he can even stay on the field more than 2 games. So that scares me if I'm a Dolphins fan. Excellent receivers, great receiving core. But you've got to have the quarterback to get in the ball. Tannehill's not that guy. I don't care who's coaching him. Bring back, anybody. The best quarterback's coach. Bring back John Gruden. He can't help Tannehill. He's from Texas A&M. They don't produce quarterbacks. It's proven. So Tannehill is not going to do anything.
Perry
And
is going to keep riding that thing into the ground.
this team is going to be at 4-12 because Ryan Tannehill will
Ooh.
finally showcase that he cannot do the job.
Jeez.
Yeah. Hot take from Gary. I like it. I wanted you two to go first because I literally have just scoured both of these schedules for the Patriots and the Jets, trying to come up with a reasonable explanation as to why I would want to take the Jets to win the division. And I can't come up with one. Obviously, the schedules for them are both very tough. I mean, you both bring up a good point that if Garoppolo goes 2-2 with the Patriots, they're in great shape at Arizona, and then 3 straight home games against Miami, Houston, and Buffalo. Definitely easy, a good chance to go 2-2. Probably lose that first game, and then the Miami Buffalo games, maybe split one of those and beat Houston. If they go 2-2, I think they win this division because can the Jets do better than 2-2 in their first 4, where they host Cincinnati, they go to Buffalo, who they can't seem to ever beat, they go to Arrowhead, and then they host the Seahawks? Can they do better than 2-2 with those 4 games? So I don't see them having a leg up on Tom Brady going into the rest of the schedule. I think top to bottom, I think the Jets have more talent than the Patriots, but they're the Jets, and they find stupid games to lose, like the Eagles last year. So it's going to be really close. I think it's going to be neck and neck the whole way. Week 16 could be the division-winning game for one of these two teams, and unfortunately it's at Foxborough. So to me, let's say they both go 10-6 because that schedule is extremely tough, but New England gets the tiebreaker. So I have the Patriots 1 at 10-6, the Jets also at 10-6, making the playoffs. I actually have Miami at 7-9. I'm not as far down on Tannehill as Gary is. My hatred toward Texas A&M is not not there, but I don't think he's like that quarterback that's going to lead you to the promised land. I don't believe in Arian Foster that much, but their receiving core is good. Ajayi can't be worse than what he was before. I think he can improve. The defense is great, and I actually have Buffalo nosediving as much as Gary had Miami, probably a 5-11 for the Bills. I just don't believe in it. They had a lot of issues with the Rex Ryan system last year, and then he brings in his brother to be an assistant, and we know exactly what he does to teams. So I just don't see it. And the other thing I just can't see is Tyrod Taylor being more than a one-hit wonder. You go back and watch any of the games last year, and he basically floundered around for a while, had a couple good runs, some dink and dunking, a lot of incompletions, and then 2 huge bombs to Sammy Watkins. That was it. That was his entire season, was finding 1 or 2 great plays to Sammy Watkins. That's not going to lead you to the playoffs or anywhere near. So I think it's a 2-horse race, and it's neck and neck, but I can't quite put the Jets over the top just yet.
All right. Well, you have our standings here. I do want to say, before these guys leave that, apologize again for having to do this kind of out of order, but sometimes technology makes things happen this way. But I do think you should certainly listen to these 3 guys that are going to be talking about their teams here that we haven't played interviews for yet, because they all break down their team really well and have a lot to say. But Randy and Gary, hope you guys can get some rest, and we'll be back on Monday with a double dose of football to the max, with Mountain West preview that we didn't get to do last week, and a big Pac-12 preview with Tony Syracuse of the Last Word on Sports college football department head, getting to that's his home base. He was even at the Pac-12 media day and everything, so he'll have plenty to say on the Pac-12. So look forward to that, and of course we'll be doing the NFC West the next time we're here for NFL on the next Friday morning. So, all right, guys. Well,
Yeah, enjoy those interviews. I'll definitely be checking them out when Spreaker decides to allow me to.
Yeah,
So I know who to cuss at the rest of the year.
exactly. I'm ready. I'll be listening too.
yeah, I should be able to upload it really quick because thankfully the app actually keeps it all together in one file. So, I can just upload it immediately after we get done with this live recording here. But all right, guys.
All right.
Take care.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and start off here with the New England Patriots. Of course, he'll give you his thoughts on what he thinks the Patriots are going to do without Tom Brady those first 4 games and where they will end up here at that end of the season and everything in between. Here is Last Word on Sports writer for the New England Patriots, Tanner Bisbee, talking all things Patriots. Hello, and I am here with Tanner Bisbee, Last Word on Sports writer for the New England Patriots. How are you doing today, Tanner?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. So, I guess the big question everybody's going to want answered here is, now that Tom Brady officially is doing that 4-game suspension, how do you think the team does with Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, it's definitely not an ideal situation for the Patriots. We'd obviously like to have Tom behind center, but it's just not how it's gonna fall out. And I think the biggest challenge is going to be getting through those first 4 weeks without a surplus of injuries. We have the Cardinals coming up first, and that's just awfully going to be a tough game for the Pats, especially with a young quarterback under center. Even with, Tom under center, it would be a tough game, but it's just all that more important. And Garoppolo is definitely going to have an immediate learning curve, especially going against that Cardinals defense. And I know that Belichick announced in a press conference that his plan is to move forward with Jimmy, and we've got no Drew Bledsoe situation, but it's all that more important, that everyone is on the same page, especially because we have another in our first 4 weeks of the season. You're going against some of the best defenses. You have the Texans in week 3, and the Bills, despite some of their troubles, still have spent a good portion of money on defense, and it makes it that more important for Garoppolo to do well. I think he's going to have trouble maybe connecting with some of the shorter routes. We know that Tom has made a lot of his money, and the Patriots have made a living and a killing off of those short passing routes, that go in behind the linebackers, just in between the safeties, and just the small slant and out routes that they've used for years. And it's going to be hard to read he's not necessarily, for his very first, NFL start. And so I think it's not a question of can he do it. The question is really how well can he do it. And I think it's just a testament to Bill Belichick's ability to plan around what is given to him. When Brady came in to sub in for Bledsoe, it was kind of rocky because, everyone was used to, the Patriots were used to a certain way of life under Drew Bledsoe, which was a strong arm quarterback that threw the ball deep downfield, and Brady came in and started throwing short to mid-range games. So I guess it's going to be hard for them, but I think that they can at least, make it through with hopefully 2 wins being a pass for him here.
So do you think they go 2-2?
I think immediately one of the best opportunities is for them to go 2-2. I see the Cardinals as being a very tough matchup, and I think it's a winnable matchup. I think it's a winnable matchup for a veteran Patriots team with their leader behind center. And it's not very fan-like for me to throw them under the bus, especially with them also going to be playing the Texans. But it's the reality of they need to be able to get through the first 4 games, one with as little as injuries as possible, and 2 with as much confidence as possible. So I think that 2-win level can really help them, to get to that point. Because if they teeter on that 1-3 or 0-4, there's a lot to be made up. And we know that Tom has done very well throughout his career, but 0-4 is a very hard thing to come back from. It's almost a death sentence.
Yeah, there's a very, very small number of teams that have done well, let alone make the playoffs, coming back from 0-4. So that's certainly, even being Tom Brady, even being the Patriots, that's going to be a tough ask, as you've said. So going into looking at the rest of the players, and specifically what they did in the offseason with free agency and the draft, I mean, it seems like certainly Tom Brady will not be complaining too much about receivers this year with the guys he has coming back, and a Chris Hogan and Nate Washington, and picking up a Malcolm Mitchell in the draft. I mean, you think they're kind of set now there?
Yeah, I think for some reason it's kind of been the answer to his prayers. I know the biggest excuse among Pats fans for years has always been, Brady's been able to win with much little. I mean, besides that obvious year with Randy Moss. But, while they get everything, they're still missing that, that deep threat that they've just never really had since Moss left. But I think this answers their questions. I mean, Chris Hogan, while he's, people have said he's relatively unproven, but you look at, who his quarterback was in Buffalo, and no harping on, Tyrod Taylor, but that's really not a guy that's going to be able to get you the ball on a consistent basis. And so I think it really helps him out, and especially even with the off-season addition of Martellus Bennett, who at his peak, 2 years ago, was one of the best tight ends in the league. And I know he had that significant drop-off in production, but then you look there at who his quarterback was and how the Bears have struggled mightily. So I think there's really no excuse after week 5 for the Patriots to really struggle on offense to get things going. The year they won the Super Bowl, they had that 1-week struggle against the Chiefs, and then it all took off. And with what they have now, with Edelman, with Amendola, with Hogan, with Bennett, and of course with Gronkowski, and then you can also sprinkle in, Keyshawn Martin, who's a guy that he's quite quick and he can get downfield. And he's a natural-born returner, made to run. So I think it really helps them. And, the Pats definitely have an opportunity to capitalize with the guys that they have, because they do have a supporting cast this year. And there's really no reason besides, the defensive issues that they may encounter why they can't go deep into the playoffs yet again.
Yeah, certainly. They should be in the same spot that we always see them in. And, that being said, now looking at this division, which got harder after the news that was just about literally less than an hour ago of the Jets officially have Ryan Fitzpatrick back after signing that 1-year, $12 million fully guaranteed contract. Do you see the division as tougher this year than last year, especially with the additions Houston made and the Dolphins having a new coach?
What I've always said, is that the division did get tougher with that, with that Ryan Fitzpatrick deal. And it was about time that that deal got done, because everyone knew that the Jets were not going to go into week 1, or we're not going to go into preseason with Geno Smith behind center. It's just not something that they would do. And it's a good move for the Jets. And, the Dolphins have spent a lot of money to get some of the game's best, on defense. And that's one spot. But, we look at the New York Jets. I guess going back to them, they picked up Matt Forte in the off season. They still have Eric Decker. Now they have Ryan Fitzpatrick, and they have the mind of Todd Bowles. But the real question is can they compete and can they win? I mean, the division hasn't been the best in recent years, but I think one of the big things for the division is while the teams have started off really well, I think the Buffalo Bills started off 4 or 5-1 a few years ago. It's that they could never, no team in that division besides the Patriots has been able to finish down the line. On that second half to that, 70, three-quarters of the way down the road of the regular season, those teams have struggled to be able to get in there. I'm trying to think of probably the Dolphins would have been the last one, to make the playoffs, I believe. And it's been really quite a while because they were the last one to win the division besides the Pats. And so there's really no excuse of why the Pats shouldn't win this division again. But I think it makes it tougher. And I really don't see. I see the Jets being a competitor, and I see the Patriots. That's who I see those two. I really don't see the Dolphins, making any real strong moves to get out.
What about the Bills?
Being a Patriots fan, the Bills will only go as far, as Rex Ryan can take them. And I think the Patriots have learned this over the years. It's obviously, just a collective hubris among Patriots fans about Rex Ryan. But, Rex Ryan had those 2 great years in New York, but then it kind of all fell out despite, the defensive play that they've had. And I think that maybe Tyrod Taylor and the Bills can maybe get to that point. Maybe they could get a wild card, but I still don't see them overtaking the division. I know Rex brought in his brother, and that's no great surprise, that happened. But I don't see the Jets or the Bills really making that big of a move. But if anyone's to get a wild card out of that division, I really think it would be the New York Jets, just because of what Bowles has been able to do with a team that was, pretty much afflicted after the Ryan era.
Yeah, it's very true. They made huge strides last year, and barely missed it. Getting to the playoffs last year, even with all the big changes that were made. So I mean, the Patriots they still have this kind of makeshift deal with the running backs, and last year they had a huge revelation in Dion Lewis really panning out for them. He tore that ACL. He's going to come back this year. You still got the Brandon Bolden's and the Garrett Blunts of the world. Do you think that you get the same Dion Lewis after that injury, or are you a little worried?
I think you get a very similar Dion Lewis. We've seen players tear their ACL and come back from it. I mean, I know when Deuce McAllister was young, he tore an ACL and he came back from it. We saw Adrian Peterson, and we know Dion Lewis is no Adrian Peterson, but the idea is that I think that he can bounce back, and I still think he can be effective. I mean, maybe he's not as effective with his cuts because, I mean, after a knee injury like that, every cut you make could be your last. I mean, I've seen it, coaching, and I've watched players, make that cut after a significant knee injury, and they just get a little bit scared. So maybe he'll be a little bit fearful of making, those side-to-side cuts, and I mean that could be troublesome. But I still think you can't discount what you get in the passing game. I mean, Lewis was among the league leaders last year in receiving yards and, reception among running backs until his fateful injury. And, the biggest actual question coming in is with LeGarrette Blount. I mean, Blount is on that side of 30. And, when the Patriots kind of got Dion Lewis, it was kind of people were wondering if it was going to be the end to the LeGarrette Blount era, but I still think you have a really good back in Blount, and you have a nice change of pace back in Dion Lewis, and, they could also add and turn around some guys in there. I mean, we saw how Ohio State did that QB platoon. While it's not ideal, it's what the Patriots have always made their living on. I mean, we look all the way back to, Corey Dillon was really that last premier back, and then you had that era with like Lawrence Maroney and Sammy Morris and, Lamont Jordan and just those no-name guys. They figured out how to, kind of mesh them together and make it work. So while I don't think it's the most effective game on the ground, I still think that in the passing game, Dion Lewis will be able to make a difference on those very short routes and those just change of pace plays.
One of the problems the Patriots had last year was certainly the offensive line. Do you think it's improved this year with the addition of Jonathan Cooper and Joe Tunney you got out of NC State?
Yeah, we look at the offensive line and, you kind of see a few things. I mean, people have said that, Nate Solder really has not been able to handle, a defensive lineman that comes at him and does a spin move on him. That's one thing that the Patriots have really had trouble with, or at least Solder has had trouble with. And then they had that revolving door at the center position. I compare kind of the troubles that the San Diego Chargers last year. I mean, we saw what happened when the Chargers had, DJ Fluker was in that lineup, and that was their best lineman that they could put on the field. And we reference that back to the Patriots. I mean, they still have Andrews, they still have Coyne, and I mean, while Vollmer, drafted in 2009, is on the wrong side of 30. He's still a good lineman. I don't know if he's going to be an all-pro lineman, but there's still some question marks swirling. But I really do think that addition at Cooper really kind of can solidify the Patriots, offensive line. I mean, we know Cooper had a pretty tragic injury, and in Arizona, so we know this is kind of the time for them to have or for him at least to have a career revival. I mean, we saw the Patriots do that with Brian Waters a few years ago, and Waters, was with the Patriots a very short time, but played pretty well for a very advanced age. And I know Cooper's nowhere near that age, but he should be able to maybe have a career revival, maybe similar to what Carson Palmer did in Arizona, and what, Dion Lewis has been able to do in New England, and kind of what, LeGarrette Blount's been able to do. I think there's still a lot of question marks. I think, Andrews and Klein could be splitting center snaps, and, there's really no perfect answer for the Patriots moving forward. I still think they'll have some questions, and they'll still have some holes at the offensive line, but anything that they did in the draft kind of just really helps their stock, especially for, defending a young, or protecting a very young quarterback who's had, he's had a couple games where he's got to play, but he's never really had that situation of where he's going to take a step up in the pocket and, see downfield. So I think it really comes down to, how well that line can mesh with Garoppolo too, to be able to know his tendencies of whether he's going to, is he always going to stay in the pocket, or is he going to move out?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how the Patriots deal with that, and perhaps they can get some of that in the training camp and in preseason, and hopefully by the time you get to that regular season, it won't take them too long to get it down. We move from the offensive line to the only other question I think perhaps the Patriots have is you lose Chandler Jones, which is a huge, piece of your defense. You kind of scrap it together with some guys you got there in the offseason and the ones you already had, like a Chris Long, a Terrence Knighton. How big a blow is it to lose a Charles or Chandler Jones, and do you feel like they've sort of covered for that?
Well, one of the kind of the biggest things is, they got Long, they put him into the equation to kind of ease that blow from Jones. But I think people really saw it as writing on the wall with, kind of Chandler Jones, because if you look, Jamie Collins and Donta Hightower are both due up for, extensions here soon. They're about to hit the open market. So it's kind of that game. You can't have the best of every single world. And I think the Patriots took that route of fishing out, Chandler Jones in the hope that they can solidify those two linebackers. And I think that, we know that Long has been able to play. We just don't know how consistently and, how often he's going to be able to play. And, on the interior, it really looks like, Malcolm Brown is definitely going to be one of those starters. The second-year guy from Texas is definitely going to be, in that conversation. And then I believe Terrence Knight and Alan Branch will, either split snaps or they'll fight it out for the starting spot. So we can't really discount, the loss of Chandler Jones because, you had a guy who was, one of the NFL league leaders in sacks. And, to lose him is, it's kind of like to lose your Achilles heel. I'm trying to think of, different, ideas of like, it's similar to like, the Broncos, if they weren't able to re-sign Von Miller. What if Von Miller had held out? I mean, great, the Patriots defense is not the Denver Broncos defense, but, the Patriots lost in, Chandler Jones, what the Broncos could have lost in, Von Miller. You lose a team leader. So I really think that the Patriots are going to really depend hard on experience and, the veterans, and, someone's got to emerge as a leader. I mean, Pat Chung's back there in the secondary, but that's not, he's, new back on the team. So I really think that the Patriots will look to Malcolm Butler, the Super Bowl hero, to, do something for them, to lead that team. And it's kind of really hard to say exactly what's going to happen. But, I think that the run game, they could struggle because, I mean, you're not going to get that same ability to move and cover the field and to get downhill in Long as you did in, Chandler Jones. They're just two different types of players. Jones is very quick on his feet and should, do marvels in Arizona. And I think the Patriots, are just plugging, with the best they can, what they've always kind of done. I mean, we saw this a couple years ago when they plugged in Kyle Arrington, and then him and, Devin McCourty kind of meshed and became league leaders in interceptions. I think, 1 year Arrington was in the top half for interceptions, and he was just a no-name guy from Tampa Bay who just came in, at a young age and kind of did well. And I think that's what the Patriots are looking for. They're looking to, to solidify their defense maybe as cheaply as possible, but, it's not a defense that's really going to, probably rank in the top. They might not even rank in the top 10, but I still think, they're a hard team to beat on defense, especially in the pass game. They still have a good secondary with Chung, McCourty, and Malcolm Butler, and then you have some, the sprinkle of, some youth. So I think the run game is the biggest question for them. I mean, the passing game they'll definitely do very well with, but on those, outside runs, it could be it could be a nightmare at times.
Certainly. So you kind of already gave me a little bit of it, but where do you think the final standings are going to be division-wise, 1-4, when it's all said and done at the end of the season?
When it's all said and done in the season, it's really hard to discount, the guys. I really do see the Patriots, maybe they don't go 10-4, or maybe they don't go 12-4. Maybe they go 10-6, are 11-5, and then I really do think that the Jets, could make that move, and they could, finish. They could finish 9-7, or they could finish 10-6, and I think the Bills, fall in behind, and I think the Dolphins will be still relegated down at the bottom of the division. And I know that's hard to say with the Dolphins. They got new guys coming in, and, now is kind of really that make or break time for Ryan Tannehill. I mean, Tannehill's been in the league for a couple of years, and now is really the time for him to, kind of either emerge as, the future for the Miami Dolphins, or maybe they kind of start over and move on from him. And that's kind of one of the bigger questions that probably they'll have to ask. But I do see, the Patriots winning the division probably at a 10-6 or 11-5. Maybe it's even by a tiebreaker. And, maybe the Jets fall in the playoffs. I mean, I think it is a very reasonable, decision, or a very, outcome and prediction to make that the Jets could very well make the playoffs. Do they win the division? Probably not. But they have a very, very good case to be a contender in that division. And, and on the flip side of it, if we come to week 17, and after, when we come to the playoffs and we look back and we look at the division, and, if the Jets don't make the playoffs, if the Jets, maybe go 7-9 or 6-10, I think that even swirls more questions about, their real validity, because like the Patriots, and the Jets really don't have any excuse not to succeed. I mean, you have 2 games versus the New England Patriots. They're going to be dogfights. You could go 1-1, but you really have no excuse not to succeed. You got your quarterback back. You have your running back now. You have your centerpiece to your offense. And so I think it's going to be a tough year in the division, but I think the Patriots get out on top, and, the Jets need to make the playoffs. I think in their minds they really need to make the playoffs. They've invested $12 million into a quarterback plus incentives, and I just think that's how it's going to fall out. But, like any sports analyst, things don't always fall out the way we want. Florida Gulf Coast beat Georgetown. That's my, reoccurring example.
All right, Tanner, thank you. You have answered all of our questions here today, and I appreciate you helping us out.
I very much appreciate, being on here, and, I hope, I'll definitely get into this podcast, when this goes live, and, Sean, I hope you have a great night.
All right, you too, man.
Yeah, bye.
All right, that was Tanner Bisbee, Last Word on Sports, New England Patriots writer, giving his thoughts, and he had plenty to say on the Patriots and everything. So now we're going to move on to another Last Word on Sports writer, James Coyne, this time talking about the Buffalo Bills. So here you go. Hello, and I am here with the Last Word on Sports writer for the Buffalo Bills, James Coyne. How are you doing today?
Great, Sean. How are you?
Doing good. So, the Bills did pretty well last year, I guess, for what you can expect with a Tyrod Taylor that at that point had been unproven, and with everything that they had kind of added with Rex Ryan into the fold. Looking at sort of the team, what they did last year and everything, do you feel like coming into this year there's a lot of higher expectations, or?
Absolutely. If you look at it, Tyrod came in as a starter week 1, but throughout camp he really only received about a third of the reps. So this season he's going to come in undisputed starter and get all the reps in camp. He's going to be able to develop more of a rapport with his receivers and really get a handle on the offense. And the offense wasn't what held us back last year. The Bills really were held back by their defense. And I think the addition of Ragland and Washington and eventually Lawson will help boost that defense, as well as Rex finally just committing to his scheme and not trying to plug square pegs into round holes, really.
Do you feel like Tyrod Taylor should have got the extension already, or were they right in making him wait?
No, they're definitely right in making him wait. They already made that mistake with Fitzpatrick jumping the gun. They really have a lot of options. People are really worried that Tyrod will hit free agency, but honestly, if they don't get an extension done and they feel like they want to keep him, the franchise tag is always an option. I know players don't like the franchise tag, but for the team, this is a business decision, and they really don't want to get burned again like they did with Fitzpatrick. So Tyrod has to prove for more than one season that he is a NFL starting quarterback, and I think that if he comes out strong, that we'll see a contract like midseason.
All right, so no worries about Cardell Jones stepping in and doing anything?
No, Cardell is a project. He's got tremendous physical abilities, but he needs to learn the pro game and he needs to work on his mechanics. Honestly, I don't see him feasibly taking NFL snaps even until next year, and even then I would prefer it still to be in a backup role as he needs to develop his game.
So is there anybody, I mean, you kind of highlighted some of the big guys from the draft, and obviously, you know, with Lawson's injury and everything, but anybody in free agency that you guys got that you think stands out to you that's really going to help the team?
We weren't really active too much in free agency given the salary cap situation. I think that there are some guys that came back, like Hankerson at wide receiver, that could contribute. I think a really underrated signing is going to be Velasco, the offensive lineman that they picked up. He can play center, he can play guard, and I think that if we see a guy like Miller, John Miller, falter and not really step up his game this season, that Velasco can jump in and take that starting spot from him, in addition to being a key piece of depth at the line.
You mentioned the defense being the fall of the team last year. Do you think now, okay, Mario Williams is out, he had a problem playing in the wrong spot, or that's how he felt, and now with the additions they've made, they're going to be better?
I really think they will. If you look at Rex Ryan's past defenses, other than a few years in Baltimore when he had Terrell Pryor, or Terrell Suggs, excuse me, he never really had a marquee pass rusher. And he generated pressure by confusing offenses and sending guys from multiple angles. While Lawson is sidelined, we don't really have a marquee pass rusher outside of Jerry Hughes, but I think you'll see a lot of different guys like Reggie Ragland coming on blitzes, and Nickel Roby excelled with Pettin from the nickel with the corner blitz. He had 3 or 4 sacks his rookie year coming in off the edge from there. And I think both Ryans will generate pressure that way. And I also think that the communication issues will be shored up, given the fact that they're not trying to kind of meld two schemes. It was disappointing to see Mario Williams act the way he did. We loved him when he signed. He was a big part of the turnaround, us getting back to 500 and having some great defensive seasons there. But it's a team sport, and everyone's got to buy in. So to see these guys buying in and really sticking to the scheme, I think that alone, along with some of these youngsters making contributions, I think the defense, it doesn't need to be a top 10 unit for the Bills to get to the playoffs if the offense performs like it did last season and the defense is half better than it was last season. I think that they'd make a serious push for the playoffs.
What does Rob Ryan bring to the team, being signed, being there with his brother? I think they had one ancillary season, I think, with Arizona, where they were both coaches on the same team, but this is a different kind of dynamic do you see this being even better, having your brother working there with you, even though they may not see things the same way?
I think for Rex, it'll be good for him to have someone that he probably trusts to help run the defense. Obviously, he's got his defensive coordinator that he brought with him, someone that he's worked, I think, maybe 10 seasons, if not more, together. But I think having a guy that can really, they think similarly but differently in ways, so it's like almost having a separate set of eyes. I think it could be beneficial. As a Bills fan, I'm hoping it's beneficial, more so than a distraction. Rob Ryan's caught some flack. A lot of people think that he's not a very good defensive coach given some of his unsuccessful runs as a coordinator, but given the circumstances he had in New Orleans, for instance, where he was forced to really feature Jarvis Byrd as a centerpiece of his defense, whereas in his scheme, like Rex Ryan's, they really run a lot of three safety packages, and the safeties are supposed to be interchangeable and not featured as playmakers. So I think like where the lines cross there, I think that they will be on the same page and really just kind of like having another set of eyes, almost like having an extra lieutenant, I think will help Rex with his game management. So he's not so focused on just the defense because he's a head coach now, not a coordinator, and he's really got to oversee the whole team and game management and time management. And I think he struggled last year, and he has in the past with that. And I think this will help.
Last year the Bills really flourished with a 1-2 punch of LaShawn McCoy and Carlos Williams, and then of course they both had injuries throughout the season, so you had to have other guys sort of step up and. Sammy Watkins also had some issues there too. With Carlos Williams now out for 4 games, do you think that they're as equipped as they were last year to kind of handle him not being there, or how does that affect the offense?
Well, it really will come down to whether the NFL levies a suspension for Jonathan Williams for his arrest. Given past circumstances, Roger Goodell usually holds off until the due process with the courts goes through. So in all likelihood, Jonathan Williams won't likely see a suspension until the 2017 season. This is a guy that, had he not been injured last year, likely would have been a second or at least a third round pick in this draft, and we were able to pick him up in the 5th, just like we did with Carlos Williams. And he has a somewhat similar running style with Carlos Williams. He's a powerful back, and I think even without Carlos, with Gillislee and McCoy and Jonathan Williams in the backfield, I think that three-headed giant will be sufficient until Carlos comes back. And it'll be interesting to see how they rotate these guys through, especially if all of them are effective. Gillislee had a few great games last season, but he also had a game where he had 10 carries and 26 yards and 2.6 yards a clip. Not designed to be a featured back, but I think the combination of Jonathan Williams, McCoy, and Gillislee will be more than enough to carry us through the first 4 games, and then we can see where Carlos is. Obviously, injuries happen, and ideally the team stays healthier, especially much healthier than last year, where you really didn't see the top 3 weapons in our offense together until late in the season. And even then, McCoy and Watkins were never really at full strength through the whole season, and Tyrod was banged up towards the end, too. So I think keeping them healthy will be key. The Bills are doing a lot to limit McCoy's reps in training camp and practices this season, this off season. So it'll be interesting to see if they can really avoid the soft tissue injuries like the hamstring that McCoy had to keep these guys all on the field. But I think if they are all on the field together, that we'll have another effective season running the football.
Last year they had to count on a lot for Tyrod Taylor to make plays with his feet and, do run and all that kind of stuff, partially due to offensive line and then partially just because of him sort of seems like he rolls out a lot to his left or right to make a pass. Is that a worry for them at all? Just offensive line holding up and him kind of being able to stay healthy that whole season?
Well, the left side's set. With Incognito and Glenn coming back, we have really a solid left side of the line. And having a solid guard like Incognito next to him, Eric Wood really brought his play up too. So that side of the line is really set. The question mark lies on the right side right now. Does John Miller come back stronger and healthier than he did last year, where he was in and out of the lineup and really hit the rookie wall? The health of Santrell Henderson is in question, but I think Mills performed admirably, and I think that he would be I don't want to say good starter, but an adequate starter. A lot of the rollouts you see with Tyrod are just parts of Roman's offense. If you go back and look at how Kaepernick was used in that offense when Greg Roman was in San Francisco, there were a lot of bootlegs and naked bootlegs and rollouts to really move the pocket because he plays to the strength of his quarterback. Ideally, we'll see Tyrod throw more often than he runs for the sake of his health, but just having the threat of his legs is always a benefit to the offense. But the offensive line play, I think, another season together, these guys, and another season under his belt for Miller with Incognito and Cordy Glenn coming back, I think that they'll be better than they were last year.
Well, looking at this division now that has a Miami Dolphins team with a new head coach that we saw what he did with Jay Cutler last year, so the Dolphins are expecting him to do the same thing with Ryan Tannehill and supposedly finally unlock his potential. Seems like you've been waiting for that forever. And then you have the Patriots, who are the Patriots, even though without Tom Brady for first four games, and the Jets, who just got Fitzpatrick back as of today. Mm-hmm. The Bills obviously have to play Tom Brady the Patriots without Brady that first time. Do you see the Patriots kind of rolling along, or do you see it being a problem without Brady there? You think the rest of the division could take advantage, namely the Bills?
I feel like this division is a lot more competitive going into the season than it has in recent seasons. Obviously, the Bills have stability for now at quarterback that we haven't seen in a long time. The Dolphins are hoping that Tannehill can up his play, and they feel that they've improved their defense. And the Jets are coming off a 10-6 season where they missed the playoffs only because they lost the last game of the season, and they finally now have Fitzpatrick in the fold. So I think that I really don't think Tom Brady being out for 4 games is really going to be detrimental to the Patriots. Even if they split their first 4 games, the history that they have and the depth that they typically have and the game plans that Belichick comes up with, I think that they will. I don't want to guarantee a division crown for them again, but I think that they'll be all right. Their schedule is really beneficial where they don't play, other than Arizona, they don't play any incredibly difficult teams, at least in how they've handled them in the past. They play the Bills and the 49ers and the Dolphins, where of those 3 teams, the Dolphins are the team that's given them the most trouble in recent history. But I think Brady being out for 4 games isn't going to swing this division one way or another, even if he played the first 4 games. We're talking maybe a 1-game difference. Garoppolo is a talented kid, and there's a reason he went in the second round, and he's been able to sit and learn, and I think Belichick will put him in a position where he doesn't have to carry the team. They'll run the ball and they'll play defense like they did when Brady was young in his career, when he wasn't throwing a lot and carrying the team. They played defense and ran the ball. And I think that's what they'll do while he's gone. As far as the other 3 teams, the Bills, Jets, and the Dolphins, it really all comes down to quarterback play for them. Fitzpatrick had a great year last year, but he still showed the penchant to make game-killing mistakes. He showed it in the last game of the year against the Bills, throwing 3 interceptions. Tannehill has been inconsistent, to say the least. If he can become a consistent threat in the pocket and bring that offense up, I think that the Dolphins will be greatly improved, but I think that they have a bigger concern with their running game than they do with quarterback right now. And we've already talked about the Bills, like their defense is a problem, and Tyrod needs to show that he can do it again, that he can be consistent. So I really think the division leans towards the Patriots, but I think there'll be some competition. I think it'll come down to the last couple weeks of the season.
So do you see the Bills maybe getting a wild card out of the division, or is it going to be too tight for that to happen?
It's entirely plausible for them. I can really see 10-6. Some games could go either way. The Bills have a penchant for losing games that they should win and winning games that they have no business winning. But they do have a challenging schedule. Like you said, they do get the Patriots without Tom Brady early in the season, but it's in Foxborough, where they've won once in the last 17 or 18 games. They play the Cardinals, which is a popular Super Bowl pick this season. We open the season with the Ravens, who should be a resurgent team with all of their players coming back, like Joe Flacco and Steve Smith. Monday nighter against the Seahawks in Seattle will be a challenging game. Against the Bengals in Cincinnati, the Bengals have been a great team. A rematch with the Jaguars. They dropped a game last year against the Jaguars that most people thought they should have won. Away in Oakland will be a tough one. The Raiders are a young and talented team, and a lot of people are picking them to take the division over there in the West. And then closing out with the Steelers, Browns, Dolphins, Jets. If Buffalo falls behind early in the season, they will struggle to make up the difference. I think for them to really grab a wild card, they're going to have to come out strong and win some games that most people think they won't win. They're going to have to beat the Patriots. They're going to have to sweep the Jets and Dolphins. And they're going to have to win some of these West Coast games that probably most people think they won't win.
So where do you see these final standings ending up then?
Division rankings, Patriots will likely repeat. I can see the Bills coming in at second and squeezing in that wild card. And this will be a competitive division. I can honestly see, if not all four teams at 500, very close. I think the Jets will come in third with the Dolphins finishing last. The Dolphins have a new head coach. Granted, Gase did great things in Denver and Chicago, but that was as a coordinator, and now he has to run an entire team, not just the offense. And some of their defensive acquisitions are questionable. Kiko Alonso hasn't been the same since he played in Buffalo. Byron Maxwell flamed out with Philly. He hasn't been the same since he played in Seattle. A lot of people think that he benefited from playing in that secondary that makes a lot of other corners look great. Mario Williams had a down season in Buffalo. He'll blame the scheme, but they have defensive ends in their 30s with Cameron Wake, Mario Williams, and they're relying on these guys to be healthy and get a consistent pass rush. Their linebackers are inconsistent, usually injured. So it was really going to come down to their defense and their unproven running backs. Arian Foster has yet to prove that he's not too old and washed up. Jay has an injury history and limited carries. I think he only carried the ball under 40 times this past season in his rookie year. So I think that the Dolphins, out of the four teams, have the most question marks as far as key positions and a lot of what-ifs. And I can see them bringing up the rear. But like I said, it'll be a competitive division, and it could flip. Anyway, it depends on which teams are staying healthy and which quarterbacks are really coming and bringing their A game this year.
All right, so give me a best case and worst case scenario for the Bills.
Best case scenario, Tyrod comes on and shows that he can be a franchise quarterback. These youngsters on the defense contribute, and the majority of the team stays healthy. They pull out a 10-6 year and break the playoff drought. Worst case scenario, the youngsters take a long time to pick up Ryan's scheme. The defense continues to struggle. The injury bug strikes again. They really can't afford to lose players like Sammy Watkins and LaShawn McCoy again this year for long periods of time, or even short periods of time. 2-3 games without Sammy Watkins can really hurt that offense. And the absolute worst case scenario is Tyrod Taylor flops, and they go into the next season with another question mark at the most important position in the sport.
All right. Well, you have answered all of our questions today. Thank you so much, James.
Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate you helping out. And, hopefully we can. All right. Well, that was James Coyne giving a great look at the Buffalo Bills for this upcoming season. Hopefully for him, the Bills don't follow our rankings of either getting third or fourth. But, let's go on to that final team, the team that many people think will come up at the rear of this division. But if you listen to Aaron Earlie here, he certainly feels like the Dolphins are not being given enough credit for improving as a team. So he gives a damn good analysis here of the Dolphins and what you can expect from them for this upcoming season. Alrighty, I'm here with Aaron Earlie again to talk some Miami Dolphins. How are you doing, Aaron?
I'm doing even better now that we got some Arian Foster.
Yeah, man. For a while it looked like it was just going to be Jay Ajayi, and now you got a 1-2 punch back. How you feeling about Arian Foster? He's had all those injury issues. You think he can overcome that this season?
Low risk, high reward. That's all that matters. Sometimes it's a 1-year contract, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 2, with a 1-year buyout. So, I mean, it's up to him. He's betting out some money on himself, and hopefully he plays like Reggie Bush did when he came over. It's all about if you can play good this season, and I'm sure he's going to give his all. I know I would.
So, do you feel like what was done in the offseason here with bringing in Kiko Alonso, who's also been injury-prone, Byron Maxwell, Mario Williams, sort of to try to replace Olivier Vernon. Do you think Mario Williams can do that, what Olivier Vernon did last season?
See, I'm a big Olivier Vernon fan because I'm a Hurricanes fan also. But he has to recognize that even though he's been on the uptick for the last couple seasons, he had Ndamukong Suh and Cameron Wake on the other side. And we also had, oh, my God, I can't remember his name right now. He used to play for the Texans at the other DT. And it's slipping my mind right now. But he had a lot of help on that D-line. So he has to recognize that going to the Giants is not as much Tuck. Is Tuck still there? No. And what's the guy that blew his hand off? It's not as much protection on that Giants defensive line. Yeah, it's not as much protection on that Giants defensive line. So they're gonna scheme on him. So if they have 3 people or a double team on him with a chip from a running back, it's not going to be the same as a one-on-one coverage. Now, when it comes to Mario Williams, who was a number 1 draft pick, and Ndamukong Suh, who was a number 1 draft pick, Cameron Wake, who's probably been the best D-end in the last 10 years in the NFL, in my opinion. And we have young D-tackles. We also have, I believe, Nick Fairley's still there. We have a lot of guys willing to plug in that gap, and we have backups. That's a position that everyone needs to watch out for. Last year was a learning curve. Our defense had high expectations, and, they disappointed. The entire defense disappointed. But we revamped everything. Sleeper pick. At the safety, it's a guy named Issa Abdul Kudus. I went to high school with the guy, close friend of mine. Watch out from him. He's going to make waves. Just be alarmed by this Dolphins defense. A lot of these guys also came from Detroit. Now, you remember that Detroit defense that was, what was they? They were like number 3 in the league 2-3 years ago, and in Sue's last year. A lot of those guys have transitioned to the Dolphins. So I'm telling you, watch out from this defense.
Well, speaking of that defense, you talked about Cameron Wake being such a pivotal part of the Dolphins for so many years. He's getting in that older age.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he still is going to be at that high level?
I'm okay with him being at a C+ level, because if you have Cameron Wake getting 5 to 10 sacks, imagine what his presence is going to do to open up Mario Williams. Imagine what that presence is going to do to open up Ndamukong Suh. You're not going to just single out Cameron Wake every game. I don't care how good your right tackle is or your tight end is. You're not going to do that.
So, I mean, looking at what they did draft-wise, I mean, they probably got the steal of the draft with Laremy Tunsil after that big debacle that happened there, and you got the other running back from Alabama, Kenyon Drake, Laurent Carew, that I think a lot of people were probably sleeping on. Do you like what they did in the draft?
Sometimes you just got to get the best player available. Let the talent fill in the gaps. Because if we continue to go for that position every time, we're going to pigeonhole ourselves. Sometimes you just got to go for it. And Tunsil, he was honestly the best player probably in the first round. But he had a snafu that, he was young. Most of us probably had an issue in college. You wouldn't want to hear about my issues in college as an athlete. So I can only imagine what a big-time football stars were. So, eat it and go. None of his teammates probably has a problem with it, especially people who are going to rely on him. That O-line, I'm sure they're going to protect him. They're not going to do the Jonathan Martin treatment. That's in the past, hopefully. But yeah, I'm sure Tannehill is bringing them all together and telling them that we need this offensive line. The offensive line is the key.
Yeah, I mean, and that he makes that offensive line so much better, with a Brandon Albert who's had injury issues, and you got Mike Pouncey there. So you really think that they're going to be able to protect Tannehill?
I do,
better?
And honestly, my biggest takeaway from last year was the game where Jawan James got hurt. I believe it was against Tampa Bay on Thursday Night Football, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
He got hurt in the first series, and they just couldn't protect him after that. Tannehill was doing pretty good being upright until Jawan James went down. Then that reshuffling of the offensive line really hurt. It really hurt us bad. So, that's my takeaway from that. If we can keep everyone healthy, of course you have the advantage, but if we can limit our big guys getting hurt, we need that protection.
So Adam Gase, much touted, quarterback whisperer, whatever you want to call him, did a lot of work with Peyton Manning, a lot of work with Jay Cutler last year after he had, all those years where everybody hated him.
But he was still good.
You think now Ryan Tannehill, after he's getting this bad reputation now of getting coaches fired and all that, I mean, you think this is going to be the year now, Ryan Tannehill, we're going to see his potential?
Have we not? That's my thing. Have we not seen Ryan Tannehill as a competent NFL quarterback? He's thrown over 3,000 yards. I think he got close to 4,000 a couple times. Our receiving core is young, hungry, a little sporadic at times. Ryan Tannehill is a little sporadic at times. But what was his name? Laser? Was that his name?
Yeah, Laser was offensive coordinator. Yeah.
He was too reliant on that style. And if you watched Philadelphia, they both played the same game and they both had the same issues. They burned themselves out. You got these guys running routes time and time again, deep routes here, a short route there, and they're tired, and they're doing this in practice. That's why these teams are burning themselves out and getting injuries across the board. You have to know how to pace your offense. And what they would do is they would run them, and then they would pace themselves too much. They would see Philly. They didn't care about the game clock, whereas the Dolphins did. They would be in a rhythm and then take themselves out of a rhythm. Sometimes you have to shut down that playbook. You have to go what's working. And what works with Tannehill is a quick tempo offense with guys getting off the field, guys coming on the field. The only guy that I actually trust right now is Landry. Devontae Parker will be fine. I see big things in him. I'm not sure what's going to go on with Kenny Stills. He's like that gray area guy. But if I can pick one of the biggest things that we lost is Matthews. That guy he just had heart. And if I can build a player, the first thing I want to build them with is heart. because you can't just manufacture that. You can't find that anywhere. And that guy, he'll run through a brick wall for that organization. And I would have did everything I can to keep him.
I mean, he was pretty much, other than Landry, he was his most reliable receiver.
Yeah. And, towards the end of the season, he got hurt too. So, injuries are never an excuse. But one thing I can point to is, let's look at the NBA, just to use a frame of reference. Last year, the Warriors had 0 injuries and skated through the NBA and won the NBA championship. This year, they got a little banged up. The teams that they were running against weren't, and they couldn't get the job done. Sometimes it's all it takes is a little tweak here or there, and it's going to ruin everything. So as long as you can keep yourself healthy, as long as you can protect everyone around you and not put them in positions where they're going to hurt themselves, fatigue, and extra hard practices where, it's practice. I get it. You don't need to be in pads every week. Sometimes you got to lay off. Sometimes you got to recognize that these guys need a break. I know it's 2016 and we're pansies and all, but that's minor athletes. You gotta push back a little bit.
I mean, speaking of that, Jordan Cameron brought over much touted guy, had a lot of the drop C's last season.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's got to be better, right?
He does, but at the same time, I can accept it. Everyone can be a rated 100 player. And we know that you came in for some big money and you were supposed to, show up to show out, especially with, oh my God, it's shaking my head. He went to Buffalo. What is his name
Clay.
right now?
Charles Clay.
Charles Clay. With Charles Clay leaving, we needed you as that security blanket. But at the same time, the other tight end, Dion, oh my God, it's slipping my mind. He didn't come up to play either. So both tight ends were struggling. And the saddest part about the tight end struggling was the tight ends coach became the head coach. So it's like they should have been the primary focus when we needed a safety valve. But what we're going to see now is a lot of screens. We're going to see a lot of what they were doing with Lamar Miller, where we get the ball out quick to a back and let the back do some work. Because the Patriots, and God knows I hate the Patriots, what they've shown is a lot of these teams are over-aggressive, especially when it comes to man-to-man defense. So we're going to take advantage over them with guys who can make a miss in space. And that's what Dolphins need to do with a guy like Jay Ajayi. He's big, but he's agile. He can get through. He doesn't need to run through the tackles every time. He can make some plays. So hopefully that's what we see a little bit more. And hopefully those tight ends could get in space because they're some talented guys. Instead of having them be blocking guys because they can't catch the ball, give them some easier catches. Give them some dig routes, or give them some just don't keep sending them on flies and posts every time and expect them to make a play.
I mean, you talked about what the Dolphins need to do, with the team as it's currently constructed, but what do they lose without Lamar Miller being there that now Foster and Ajayi have to cover for?
They lose assurance because Lamar Miller was a pretty sure thing. 1,000 yards I would say it's easy for an elite back, but for him, he wasn't necessarily an elite back. For him to get to that 1,000-yard threshold or near it for the past few years, that showed them that they had something. Even if they didn't use it quite the right way with Philbin, at least they had that guy that can break out. Right now, we know Arian Foster can be good. We don't know if he will be. We know Jay Ajayi can be good, but we don't know if he will. Two totally different situations. One is a veteran coming off injury, and one is a rookie with a lot of upside. With Lamar Miller, we've seen that upside come to fruition. Now, will we see it in Denver? I'm not sure. That's a totally different system. But I mean, you missed that, and we missed that when Reggie Bush left. We missed that when Ricky Williams left. When that next guy came up and they didn't get the job done. So hopefully these guys work. And I don't mind if they both run for 1,200 yards combined. I don't mind if one of them runs for 1,200 yards. As long as we're moving the ball on the ground, keeping it consistent, giving Tannehill bootleg opportunities because we need to get him moving. We need to get him in space. We'll be fine.
So, I mean, looking at this division you're in, which, yeah, especially with the news that happened yesterday with the Jets getting Fitzpatrick back, I mean, it's a rough division. A lot of people already saying it's going to be a tough road for the Dolphins. I mean, what do you think are the Dolphins' chances here in the division?
Personally, as a fan first, I say we have a chance. The thing I hate about prognosticating is we're looking at last season as a barometer for difficulty and schedule. Every team changes. No team is the same. I don't care if it's the Patriots. I don't care if it's the Seahawks. I don't even remember who won the Super Bowl last year. But Denver, no team changes. I mean, no team is the same. If we look at the schedule based on everyone's record from last year, it's probably very difficult. But glad we don't play the game on paper. Glad we play the game out there on the field. We weren't who we were last year. So why should we expect everyone else to be who they were? We're going to go out. We're going to play 16 games. We're going to make the playoffs, and we're going to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Why? Because I'm a fan. Now, let's take my fan glasses off real quick. What I see is an improved team on offense and defense. I see a coach that's coming in that has a renewed vigor, that's telling everyone everything that they need to hear for them to excel. After week one, everything can change with a catastrophic injury, whether it's on us or someone else. So I don't know, but I do know Tom Brady's not going to be there when we play him. So I'm going to check that off as a win for us. And that's going to be a momentous win because I think we can be 4-0 after the first 4 weeks. Will we? Maybe, maybe not. But I think the difference is we have to get off the snide. If you remember last year, the first game we played the Redskins. Now, the Dolphins we had an expectation that we were going to be a great team. We got Dominican Sue. Our defense was going to be phenomenal. And we struggled out the gate against the Redskins. Most people laughed at us because they said, oh, my God, you guys are struggling against the Redskins. Well, part of that was because the Redskins were a good team who made the playoffs. Another part of that is the Dolphins were a struggling team. So you can't let off-season critics tell you you're going to be good or not, because at the end of the day, they don't matter. The only thing that matters is who's on that field for 60 minutes. So I see these guys, and I see 60 minutes worth of, as long as they play hard and don't make mistakes, they'll be fine. But that's anybody. But if I can pick a record, I would say 11-5.
All right. I mean, so for you, do you think you got them at 11-5? So do you have anybody above them
in that division? No.
Yeah.
First off, I think we have to recognize that the Jets were a flash in the pan. All right. I don't think they'll be good this year. I think they're going to have quarterback issues. I think Geno and Fitzy, I think they're going to have a little bit, some squabbles over there. Is their defense good? Of course, their defense is good. But I think this is an offensive-driven league. And if you can get through in the regular season with an offense, you'll be fine. Now, defense comes to play in the playoffs when things get a little tightened up. But as long as you can go through the regular season, we'll be fine. I don't see the Jets as a better running team. I don't see the Jets as a better passing team because I don't value their quarterbacks over Ryan Tannehill. The only quarterback in that division that I value over him is Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's out for 4 games. Is Tyrod Taylor a good player? Of course he is. But that was also a flash in the pan. As you can see last year, he began to fizzle out. So I don't know. I think the Patriots always have a chance, but I think this is their year to go down. They're going to be probably 6-10, and that's just me being a hater personally. But I just see Brady not being Brady. It's the downtime is coming.
Man, you're right. There does have to be that year where he finally isn't Tom Brady. How do you see them doing in those 4 games that Brady's not
The
there with the
Patriots.
Patriots? Yeah.
What's their quarterback's name again? I'm trying to remember him.
Garoppolo.
Garoppolo. Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo. If he can play anywhere near what Kirk Cousins played when he started last season, they can win, and they can win all 4 of those games, including against us, because it's a momentum thing. You know, when you feel like you're being cheated, and then this guy rallies you, it can really work wonders for you. Now, if you feel like you're getting cheated and this guy sucks coming out the gate, it can really deflate you. So I think it all boils down to his performance. Now, if he comes out game 1 and he's out like gangbusters, there'll be a dangerous team to watch out for, just because of that momentum that he's creating and the rest of the team believing. You know, like it's like USA Soccer a couple years ago when they had that whole believe streak. And I really got them going. Like, you might think, hey, these guys are just better than some of the other teams, but I don't. I just think they were really going off that momentum. Sometimes it hits you hard, but other times you ride it. You know?
So give me you kind of already told me the Dolphins are going to be at number 1, but give me a final standings for the division.
Dolphins, Buffalo, Patriots, Jets.
Man.
I think Buffalo can get to 9-7. I think they honestly can make the playoffs just by Rex willing them there. I don't think they're as good as a team as the Patriots, but I also think the Patriots will be coming off of just not being happy, and that can really affect you. That can really, deflate you.
All right, fair enough. So give me a best case and worst case scenario realistically for the Dolphins.
Well, of course, best case scenario is the Super Bowl, because I do see this team as very talented, and I see this team as ready to strike, and strike beneath the radar. People aren't expecting it, and that's cool. I don't need you to. Worst case scenario is losing the division. Actually, no. The worst case scenario is not losing a division. The worst case scenario is going 7-9 again, or 8-8. That's the worst case scenario, because what that creates is more doubt. Doubt that you're a contender. Doubt that you can hang. It's going to create people to want to fire this person and remove that person. So that's actually worse for me. I would rather us go 2-14 than 8-8. Unless we make the playoffs at 8-8, then that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that feeling of like, well, you got so close, but it doesn't really mean anything. Whereas at least you get a draft pick at 2-14.
Yeah, like mediocrity is probably a lot worse than being decrepit. Like, I'm sure Lions fans aren't upset when they go 2-14. Now we're used to it, but then when they go 8-8, it's like you gave me hope. Like, I should have never had faith in you. You always let me down. You can't let me down at 2-14.
Yeah, you're already kind of down there.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna still root for us, but it's like, whatever. If we lose, we lose. We always lose. Yeah.
All right, Aaron, you answered all of our questions here, so I want to say thank you again for helping out.
Anytime. That's what I'm here for.
All right, man. You have a good night.
That I will. You do the same.
All right, that was Aaron Earlie talking about the Miami Dolphins, and that'll conclude the AFC East preview for us. Like I said, again, if you're a college football fan, you can check us out on the Tuesday morning show doing a double dose of college football with Mountain West preview. That'll be Brandon Clapp talking Mountain West, and then us giving our division standings, and we'll have Tony Siracusa again for the Pac-12. So that should be a really good show. But all right, everybody. Until then, see you later.